Hi everyone, I'm Kathy, I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, it's amazing how if I was an actor, I'd be the actor on the stage and I would be able to sit here for 2 hours and share my story and not be nervous. But it's different now because I'm not that actor, but I'm just going to share my experience, strength and hope, hopefully. Yeah, and it is scary because you all know, most of you know me, and I've just got to share my truth, which is not what I'm scared about. As I've often said, I've got the disease of alcoholism. It's all about my behavior. It doesn't matter that mine manifested in gambling because my experiences, it's all about the behavior. It doesn't matter about the substance or anything like that. But if you had asked me over 7 years ago what the problem was, I would have said all of you. Everyone was my problem in my life, I was in total denial of who I was, and everyone else was the problem. Having said that, I grew up in Zimbabwe, and I had 3 brothers. I was the 3rd child, and my mom thought she had 4 boys. So as a result of that, I always felt different. I didn't feel part of, even at that age, And then I wanted to be this boy and I wanted to be a girl, and then we'd go to the family functions. I wanted to wear my pretty dresses. Go to school, I wanted to wear my party, had the tantrums, and I mean hectic tantrums. I can still remember to the day the performance and the way I used to carry on with my mother every morning, And then, I decided, well, I either got to fit in or try and fit in, and so I was a real tomboy. Played rugby with my brothers. I did all that type of stuff. At school, I didn't have many friends, and in fact, what is so amazing is that every one of you sitting here is part of my family, part of my friendship, and yet I never in my whole life have had so many friends. I think if we had one person left in the room, that's what I had in the end, and that was my reality. My parents got divorced. My dad had affairs and what have you, and I played off one parent against the other. When my mother didn't give me what I wanted, I'd move out and go to my dad, and when my dad didn't do what I wanted, I'd go back to my mom. So from an early age, I never even felt settled. I never really felt that I had a home. I was put in boarding school, I think the year my parents got divorced, and I ran away. And I went with a friend, and we ran, and we got to this hotel in Harare. And I phoned my dad, think he'd have open arms with me and say, "Come, my darling, I'll come pick you up." And he told me to get back to school the way I came. And I felt so rejected then. As a result, I think myself and one of my other brothers also ran away, and they decided boarding school wasn't a good option. But even in boarding school, I really struggled. I struggled to make friends. I struggled to be, I'd try and do things to be part of, and I still felt apart from. Then I was only about 16, and I decided to go and live with my dad and my stepmom. And we had come down to South Africa on holiday, and my dad had forgot to register me at school. For some reason, he thought my mom had done it. So when I went back, I had no school to go, and my dad said, "Well, you're just going to have to go out and get a job." And got quite a cool job working in a record, LP store or record store, those days back then. And I did that, and then I remember my dad used to go fight with my stepmom. He had not come home late. And then one morning she was really angry with me, and she told me that I was using too much butter on my toast. And I told her what I thought of her. And funny enough, I held on to that resentment until I did my step 5. And she kicked me out the house, and my dad phoned me that day and said, "Right, you won't be coming back to live with us. I've already packed up your stuff. I found you a flat, and this is where you need to go." And I'll never forget, I had 2 garden chairs and a bed, and that's all I had. And I had a 2-plate stove, which I had to boil water on. It was just like I felt rejected once again. I'd caused so much chaos in those days. My brother's 21st, I was I didn't even have alcohol, but I was stark raving mad. Because my dad was there and I'd had this fallout, I had a huge argument with him while his 21st was going on at this hotel. I screamed, shouted at him, and I caused absolute chaos. Eventually, I had to be removed from there by the security. And that's something that I did to my brother. It was no thought about his special moment. And throughout my active addiction, I basically did that at every function. I always caused a scene. In fact, it got to the point where I was no longer welcome. And I can share about so much, but what I'm going to share about, which stands out for me a lot in those days, was, the gambling that only started years later, but what it was about my behavior. I did crazy stuff. I went out with this guy, and I'd moved down to East London, and I'd met him in a pub, and within 2 weeks we were moving down to East London and starting a business. And while I was in East London, things were a bit difficult, and anyway, our relationship didn't work, and I was working as a waitress at night, and I got this guy bringing my car, and I said, well, where's Bruce? And he said, no, he's decided to leave you. And I thought, oh, shit, okay. And he had drawn all the money out of my bank account. There was about 15,000, sorry. And I went looking for him. I was so obsessed with him, I went looking for him. He came back 2 weeks later. Please forgive me, I'm wrong. Please come back and be with me. And he did the same thing. He did the same thing twice to me. Third time, I still took him back. I mean, that's the insanity. And when I wasn't getting my fix off, I was always getting my fix off relationships. Every single relationship I had was totally obsessive. I was incessant. I would cause chaos. I felt my justification for that was, well, my dad messed my mother around. I'm not going to allow any other man to. And therefore, my control issues and my behavior, my insecurities, I would not even allow this guy to go to the shops on their own. I was totally insane. And there's been so many stories. And then the last one was with my husband. I mean, I say this with humility, that when I was in recovery, when I was doing my steps, I realized that I married him not because I loved him, but because it was for me. I was 36, I didn't want to be on my own. And I was so manipulative. I knew that he had a previous child, and he said the next time someone falls pregnant, he's going to have to marry them and give that child a father. And so I fell pregnant, and he married me. And I basically entrapped him into the marriage. But same thing, I would do some crazy stuff, which a lot of you have heard. We'd fight. First of all, I'd leave, and then it was an excuse for me to go off and gamble. And then he decided, no, he'd leave. And as he was packing the car, I would be unpacking the car. As he was doing stuff, I eventually used to lie at the back of under his back tire and not allow him to go. He'd physically remove me, and then he'd go off. I'd leave my child, who was only 8 at the time. I'd get in my car and chase after him and try and find him. No consideration for my child there. And I did this crazy stuff. I had a fight with him the once, and I always justified, I say that there was physical abuse, but I think 99% of that time I provoked that physical abuse, I got the knife cleaver the one time, and I said, right, if I were you, I wouldn't sleep with my eyes closed tonight, I was so intimidating. And through that, I did that to my kids. I was very intimidating. My staff that worked for me, I thought they actually respected me, but they were they were scared of me. They were 5 minutes late, and they were given a written warning. I disappeared for 4 hours, and none of their business, But the crazy stuff that I did, I would hide when I was winning money in the casino. I'd hide it. I'd hide it in all my jackets. I would deprive myself of anything because I needed that money to gamble with. look, when I was younger, I did try to drink, but it didn't make me feel good. I didn't like feeling out of control. But I'm the type of chick that would dance on bar tables, do crazy stuff without the alcohol. There's so much that I've done, but I think what I've got to say is my behavior throughout my life has always been about me, selfish, self-centered. I think if you had to look at all the defects, that's who I was. And if I don't work this program, that's who I am. I can be. So I'm a thief, I'm a liar, I manipulate, I'm dishonest. I'm everything that there is to be. But having said that, with the 12-step program and my relationship with God, I don't have to be that person anymore. The day came when I'd disappear for 3 days. And I share this often too. I'd go into the casino and see people leaving their children in a room, and I think, how dare can they sit here at 10 o'clock at night and leave children in the room while they're gambling? And there I was, leaving my son, disappearing for 3 days, and them not knowing where I was. I stole money out of work, petty cash. I was in a position of authority. I used that authority. I was so grandiose. I was so arrogant. I just destroyed people's lives. And if I can say that, I was with that company for 14 years. And a lot of those people left because of me, and I didn't think it was me, you know. I was incessant. I used to phone my husband 15, 20 times a day, and it got to the point where he just wouldn't answer my calls anymore. When I'd go to my children's functions and things like that, it wasn't even about them, it was always about me. And I got to the point where I started isolating, and my last sort of thing was when I'd lost everything. I mean, I did some crazy shit, stole money out of the bonds, spent 150,000 Rand in like 2 days. And the insanity to think that 500 Rand would make back that 150,000 is like, that's where I thought, you know. The insanity to also think that I wasn't the problem. I'd gone to a psychologist and convinced him that my husband was the problem, and that he's a misogynist, and that he beats me, and he does all this stuff. And I said to the psychologist, as long as you can make me strong enough to leave him, that's okay. But anyway, it got to the point where I lost everything, and I got home, and my husband had forgiven me 3 or 4 times before. I'd written promise notes, please don't, you know, I'll never do this again. If I do it again, I'll take my clothes and leave. I'll give up my children, I'll give up everything. And whatever I promised is actually what happened, because I tried to commit suicide, and then the next day he says, right, you're out, you're getting out of here, you can't come back. And I was meant to go to a sleep clinic, and the only friend I had left was the one that phoned Brian, and I got to the house on the hill. And when I got there, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff. I'd convinced my husband to divorce me and remarry me so that I wouldn't be a threat to his financial well-being. So we'd get remarried and not get married with accrual. We'd just get married into nuptial. And the thought there was not about what was going on, but wow, he's going to pay me out R1 million, and I can go and gamble R1 million if I take so much per month and gamble, and that's what it was all about. And also, there's a lot that I've realized in recovery is that it wasn't about winning or losing, it was about feeling good. As long as I felt good, I was okay. And it was constantly, you hear this cliche all the time, but constantly looking outside myself to make me feel better. And that's what I'd done. So when I came and I was really broken, I had not spoken to my mom for a year. And you know, it's amazing how God works, because it was all about me coming up here, and yet everyone I tried to phone, my brothers, my whatever, no one answered their phone. So no one even knew where I was going. I'd lied, I'd borrowed money, I'd steal money, I'd stole my son's, he worked as a waiter, and I convinced him not to deposit that money into an account, but I used his money, so I stole it. I borrowed money telling people that I was getting divorced and I needed it for divorce, and I was gambling it away. So pretty much I'd done a whole lot of damage. But in recovery, when I first got into the center, And I was there a day, and someone said, were you going to get a sponsor? And I thought, oh, thank God, someone's going to help me out financially. You know what I mean? That was my impression. I had no idea what a treatment facility was all about. But what I did know is, why are these people being so nice to me? I don't have anything to give them, you know, because that's what I did. I would buy my friends, you know, I'd get attention through that type of thing. And then as I stood there, I mean, I came to a meeting a couple of days after, and in that meeting I found such a sense of belonging, an overwhelming sense of belonging. And I think what it was all about was the identification. And I was so amazed that, yes, I did look at some differences, but the similarities when people shared about the crazy shit that they did, and I did that, wow. And soon realizing that my sponsor was there to help me and not to help me financially, you know, things started changing for me. I had turned my back on God. I only prayed for God. I'd sit at the casino table and say, God, if you exist, you're going to give me money, you know? You're going to give it to me. And I realize now that whatever was taken away from me was to take me to that point of desperation, to the point where I had nothing left, and in order to gain, I had to lose everything, you know. My recovery has been, what's happened in my 7 years of recovery has been the best years of my life. I do not regret my past. I had a huge resentment towards my husband for quite a few years into recovery, and today I am thankful every day for what he did for me. I think he still has a huge resentment towards me, and if he knew how I felt, I don't think he'd be too happy, but that's not my stuff, you know. My relationship with my children has been difficult initially, and it's amazing how, you know, I see all the God incidents in my life. The day that I was kicked out of the house, my husband removed the kids without me even seeing them, and they happened to come back before I left, and I begged and pleaded and said to him, just let me speak to my son. My oldest son wasn't living with me at the time, and he just said yes, and I just told my son, Mommy's going to a place to get better. And that's what it was like, you know. And it was very difficult in the first week or two at the treatment facility. I think every time we said the Serenity Prayer, I cried. Every time we went through to a meeting, I'd say, well, I shouldn't be going to this meeting. I should be cooking dinner for my son. A lot of guilt and shame around, you know, all that stuff. And I must say, in my recovery, there are moments when I do act out in guilt and shame. And I people please my kids. And the trigger for me is when I start getting angry, and I'll give you an example. My son will ask to go somewhere, and I'll say, no, we've already discussed this. And then eventually I give in, and then on the way the taxi cuts and cross, you know, in front of me, and I start, you frigging arsehole, and I start swearing and carrying on. And I'm not even angry with the taxi. It's all about my people pleasing, you know. And there's so much, you know, willing to go to any length. I moved after I was in the treatment facility for 9 months, 3 months primary and 9 months, 6 months tertiary. And while I was there, I had to go back to my job. I was so grateful how God had worked there. I literally came in with 20 Rand to the treatment facility and a debt of over 800,000, and not knowing whether I had a job or not. And my sponsor kept saying God works through people. And I had to phone my work, and they said to me, well, we're keeping you employed and we're paying your salary. And they even paid my shortfall of the medical aid, which is absolutely amazing, you know. And then I had to go back and work, and I found that very difficult. So I traveled, as my sponsor said to me, you know, willing just to go to any length. And I traveled backwards and forwards to Pine Town every day, and just do what I had to do, you know. And then I realized after 6 months I couldn't be there. But, you know, those are the things that have happened in my life. I was told that I wouldn't be allowed to have access to my child. It would have to be supervised visitation. Well, that didn't happen. The God incidences in my life have been absolutely amazing. Another thing, I was unemployed for a while. I had no money, and I cleared my overdraft, but I was living off it for a couple of months. I was working but not generating an income, and I literally had $2,000 left to my name. And my sponsor said, you need to phone so-and-so and ask for help. And I said, impossible, I can't do that. I ended up asking for help, and he supported me financially for 15 months. And the amazing part is, when I wanted to pay that money back, he said to me, not necessary. Take it as part of your divorce settlement. You know what I mean? It was absolutely amazing how things have happened. So when I was unemployed, my sponsor said to me, you've got to go out and look for a job. So I thought, okay, tried. I volunteered a bit at the treatment facility. I had a dishonesty, and I had to leave. But anyway, so the doctor had said to me, there's a job going at a mortuary in Durban. Well, it's for Scopra, but you need to go for the interview in Durban. And I said to my sponsor, he says, look, you've got to go and try. So off I went for the interview, came back, okay, hoping that I wasn't going to get the job. Even though I was financially in shit, I get called back for the second interview, and the guy says to me, well, how do you deal with dead bodies? I don't know. So he says, well, come, I'll show you around. So he's like, take me down to the dead bodies, like it was like going through a showroom of cars, or, you know what I mean? It was like, and I kept a straight face. And then after we went back into his office, and he says, well, how do you feel? I said, no, I'm fine, you know. And I was like so overwhelmed with that. And the difference there was I was willing to do anything, you know. And ended up not getting the job, but the point is it was all about the willingness. And I've also realized that whatever I do, if I put myself amongst everything else, then I can't do that, you know, because then I'll get the lesson or make the wrong decisions, you know. Then my sponsor said, you need to move to Durban, and I said, impossible, I can't do that, I haven't got a job. So she says to me, but you don't have a job now anyway. And I'm like, okay. So I moved and I found a place, and then a week later there was a job going for someone who lived in Kloof, and I got that job, you know. I also got the lesson in that job about being dishonest. I was asked why I was living in Scopra, and I said, well, because I got divorced and I wanted to get away from my ex-husband. And that's not the truth. The truth was I was in a rehab, and I wanted to stay within the community, and that's why I lived in Scopra. And I got the lesson on that too. For some reason, I wheel clamped some cars, and there were staff at Stoker's. And they phoned my head office and said that I've been drinking there every day, sitting there, because they were angry. Cut long story short, they said, well, we can't offer you the job anymore. And I said, well, look, I'm willing to go for polygraph tests, I'm willing to do this, or whatever. Anyway, I kept my job, and I had a thing in my contract saying that I'd be breathalyzed or tested every so often, which was not a problem. But the amazing thing through that and I went through a lot of pain with that for about 2 or 3 months. That's how long it took me to get over that. But the amazing thing through that is I sponsored a lady that came out of the treatment facility, and I decided to leave and start my own business, and she got the job. So it was amazing how I could help somebody else through that experience. The gifts, what else recovery's given me is, I share this too, I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know who I was, I didn't know what I liked. So the first year I pretty much personified my sponsor's life, and I liked Fanta Grape because it was purple. If you'd asked me what I liked, what sport I liked, I couldn't tell you. And my sponsor said to me, you need to get a hobby. And for months I was trying to figure out how to get a hobby. And I met a friend in the fellowship, and he was having a family, well, a fellowship function. And he said, why don't you take some photographs of us while we're playing volleyball? And I did that, and afterwards he said to me, wow, you're so good, you know, why don't you? And he taught me how to do photography, and that's also one of my passions, you know. That fear of people and economic insecurity, I think every year I've shared, I've always said I have fear of financial insecurity. And I don't have that anymore. Not because more money's come in, it's got to the point of I know I get exactly what I need, you know. it's amazing how my business, we do exceptionally well, and I think, wow. And then it's the services and it just all goes out. So my experience in that is God will give me exactly what I need, you know. My relationship with my children, as I said, has been one of the difficult things, because I can love you all unconditionally, but I have expectations of my children. And they're just like me when I was an active, which is the behavior, you know. But I just keep working my program. My relationship with God, when I was in the treatment facility, I started writing down my prayers to God, because I didn't know how to pray. And someone just said to me, ask for the knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. And when I started doing that, it was actually quite simple for me. I don't get it right. You know, there's been a lot, I can go on for hours what's happened, but the most amazing thing for me is, as my recovery has gone on, I think that's what 7 years has given me, is a better understanding of who I am. I suppose it gets more difficult, but what it's given me is, where I used to sit and stuff for 2 or 3 weeks, I now sit and stuff for a couple of days, and it's given me the ability to have relationships with people. It's given me the ability to love. It's given me so much more than I ever thought was possible. This year I was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder that is progressive. So what happens is I lose my vision, my central vision, and a whole lot of other things, and there's no cure. And I got really angry. I was really angry. First of all, I was in shock. And then I got really angry, but within 2 days, I thought, wait, hold on. God's given me this disease to help me deal with that, and I'm okay. Because in that madness, I was so fearful of, what am I going to do? I can't drive, I can't do anything, how am I going to do it? And constantly in that fear, and I thought, the guidance of my sponsor, who is such an amazing person, made me see through that, and I no longer live in that fear. It's almost like it's not an issue in my life. Whereas before in active, everything was an issue, everything was a problem. And what the program's given me is the solution how to live my life on a daily basis. Thanks for letting me share.